Salutations, respected viewers. This is George from Ireland. And I'm going to ask in this video, what happened to the blue wave? Those midterm elections were a week ago. Almost all the results are in. So there were many Democrats who were quite optimistic about this election, and they felt they were going to make major gains. Unfortunately, it was the same false forecast that was seen in 2016. Now, there was some good news for the Democrats. They gained the House of Representatives by a reasonable margin. Overall fell back a little bit in the Senate. Now, admittedly, the Republicans were only defending 8 seats. There's a maximum gain of 8. Now, the Democrats have gained 2 but lost 3. So the sum of that is that they've actually gone back 1. There we are. So the opinion polls showed the Democrats well ahead, roughly 10% ahead. In the end of the day, certainly for the Senate elections, the Democrats got 8 percentage points more than the Republicans. Incidentally, Trump is on an average of 11% disapprove, 11% behind the Democrats, as you were, if you look at approve, disapprove. The thing is, your opinion of Trump isn't exactly the same as whether you're going to vote Democrat or Republican. You could disapprove of Trump and still vote Republican. You could even approve of him and still vote Democrat, because obviously he's not on the ballot paper, whatever he says. I know his record and personality counts for quite a lot in this, but it's just possible that you vote Democrat anyway, or you dislike him and still vote Republican and blah, blah, blah. But he's less popular than his party, which is notable. There's always a bit of a discrepancy between the opinion poll and the actual result. Remember, the opinion poll is just that. It's an opinion poll. Now, they ask a sample of adults, 1,000 or even several thousand adults, try and make it representative of the whole electorate. But pollsters can only report what people tell them. Some people refuse to answer, some people can't be reached, some people lie about their voting intentions, they change their mind at the last moment, or they don't bother to vote at all. The Democrats gained several gubernatorial races, governorships of various states. So, there are definitely some positive takeaways for the Democrats. For the Republicans, it wasn't disastrous, considering just how execrable the Trump administration is, a political vomitorium with all sorts of racial and religious prejudice, just utterly chaotic, so erratic, so utterly dishonorable. You'd think that they'd be reeling, but no, they've fallen back only a little bit. So I can see why Trump thinks it wise to appeal to people of faith, because they have blind faith in him. Look at his rallies. You can see the trust in their eyes, just lapping up the lies. But they're committed now. They made their choice. And they don't want to say, you know what, I've been had. I was a chump. I was fooled. I was beguiled by this world-class conman. Anyway, the Democrats made some gains when they needed to. Some of the Midwestern states, particularly near the Canadian border, was where they made some gains, and that's where they did badly in 2016. That was meant part of the blue wall, which failed to materialize. There have been several firsts in this election. The first openly gay governor, but you can't say it was a blue wave, more of a blue dribble. We thought it was going to be shocking blue. Well, some people did. There was going to be major gains. Well, my predictions were more pessimistic than that. But it's not still midnight blue for the Democrats. If they lost overall, as in gone backwards overall, then they would have really been crying into their beer. So Muslim American women elected to the House of Representatives, a Native American woman as well. So the Democrats are winning in groups where they need to win, groups which are growing. Muslim Americans are only about 3% of the population, but they're growing. Well, the Native American community is not growing, but obviously there are plenty of gay people now, openly gay people, although I'm not sure they're growing that much. But amongst Latinos and African Americans, the Democrats are making gains. Amongst young people of all races, the Democrats are doing well. So Trump appeals to white nationalism. I wonder if he's the last hurrah of white nationalism. The US is roughly 65% white. The question is, how white is white? Are some Hispanic people white? It's debatable. Is being Hispanic, is that a linguistic group? If someone of Hispanic origin starts to speak English as his or her principal language, no longer speaks Spanish at all, is that person still Hispanic? Again, it's open to question. Hispanic people, are they really an ethnicity? Some of them are Mesoamerican. Some of them are Spanish stock, mixed stock. You can be a black Hispanic person. In Mexico, I met Mexican people who were completely black, likewise Peru and so on. So it's not clear what the definition is. But anyway, by almost any definition, the whites will be a minority in about 30 years' time, probably still a plurality. So I got a lot of white supremacists railing against me on this channel. What are you going to do? What are you going to do in 30 years' time? That'll be doomsday for you. Where are you going to go? Going to immigrate somewhere? But you're against immigration. Not against whites who immigrated to the US. It wasn't even the US back then, in the 17th century, the 18th century. So although the Democrats didn't quite make it in Florida, they ran the Republicans very close. So just one more push to get over the line next time for Andrew Gillum. They had a lot of racial prejudice to overcome. Likewise in Georgia, Stacey Abrams might still win. It's still up in the air. Republicans think that counting votes is cheating. What? And the Republicans engage in a flagrant vote suppression exercise. When they can't win, they just cheat. It's nauseating. This is supposed to be democracy. Stephen Crowder and any other Republican partisans are always saying, no, the Founding Fathers didn't set up a democracy. Well, that's certainly true. They didn't, because no country in the world was democratic or even claimed to be democratic in the 18th century. Setting up a representative republic, well, it wasn't representative in the 18th century. Women weren't represented at all. African Americans weren't represented, even free ones usually. Native Americans weren't represented. Poor white men weren't represented. Only a minority of rich white males allowed to vote. So a very unrepresentative system. And I know then New Jersey briefly brought in the right to vote for women. Things like that, got rid of it after a while. So no wonder Republicans don't want it to be democratic, because they know they'd lose. And they don't want it to be representative either. So 8 percentage points ahead if you look at the senatorial elections overall. Now, the thing is, it's not a proportional system, because every state, irregardless of the size of its population, has 2 senators. So that's why Wyoming, per capita, is hugely overrepresented, more than California. Let's see, about 150 times overrepresented in relation to the size of its population in comparison with California. So I've been doing some estimates about this. Line up the states of the USA by population. California at the top, approaching 50 million people. Wyoming at the bottom, around 300,000. And add up the total population of the 26 smallest states by population. And you take and how many votes would they typically be? This is about 50% turnout in this year, in this midterm election, a bumper year for turnout. In some ways, that's a sign of a very vibrant democracy, a healthy sign. We should be pleased. But anyway, look at typical turnout and take half of that, and you see how many votes you would need. So you could win a majority in the Senate, in theory, with about 15% of the vote. I'll explain the methodology. If you won the smaller states like Wyoming by 1 vote, you'd get both senators. Well, you get a senator for Wyoming. Obviously, the next midterm, you need to do the same. And there's states with very small populations like Rhode Island or North Dakota, so on. If you won all those small states by 1 vote each, you could have a majority in the Senate. Obviously, 26 states would need to win every single senatorial one. One state, you could just win 1 Senate seat, not both, to get 51 senators. So you could win a majority of the Senate without 15% of the vote. 15%, 15%. And if you lost all the major states, got not a single vote in the larger states like California, New York, Texas, Florida. Now, there's something very wrong with that system. That is first past the post. I know the United Kingdom has that system, which is bad as well. I oppose it there too. Now, admittedly, that's not going to happen. And actually, there's some states with high populations where the Republicans do quite well, have solid majorities like Texas, and they do pretty well. And that's another takeaway. Beto O'Rourke narrowly defeated by Ted Cruz, about 3 percentage points in Texas. And the Republicans have held that since, is it 1994? So obviously it used to be a Democrat state long ago, before civil rights came along. But Lion Ted, as Trump correctly called him, he won that. So I know it's the pot calling the kettle black, Trump saying anybody is a liar, but just occasionally, even the devil speaks true. So to be Ted false accusing his opponent of wishing to legalize heroin, of wanting open borders, of planning to take people's guns away. And, Ted Cruz is a man who's a Bible basher. He bangs on about what a fervent Christian he is. His father was a minister, he'd like you to know. But bearing false witness against your sin, against your neighbor, is one of the sins in the Decalogue, and he will commit this iniquitous act of making these bogus statements. It is nauseating, but I'm afraid that's just typical. It's very dispiriting the way baddies often win, the way that flagrant lying is a winning electoral strategy, and that's that. And the most unpopular candidates are often the best ones for the really minor parties like the Greens or the Reform Party, something like that, because the truth is unpopular. It's one of the greatest lies ever told, that honesty is the best policy. I mean, obviously honesty is considered to be the distasteful, the height of bad manners. People don't want to be told the truth quite a lot of the time, and people are excoriated for telling the truth. My personality type goes in for radical honesty, gets me into trouble some of the time for speaking my mind, which is immensely emancipating to say what I actually think. But people often find the truth to be completely intolerable. Tell me lies, tell me lies, tell me sweet little lies. That's what Kylie Minogue sang way back in 1987. So people who are frank, who go in for logical reasoning, who tell it like it is, who identify problems, who would have people face up to things no matter how unpalatable, and propose drastic solutions. They don't win, and people just want to be reinforced in their delusions, particularly religious fundamentalists. But anyway, a little progress has been made. Trump might be forced to submit his tax returns, which he promised to do and has never done because they're being audited. They're too complicated for people to understand. Come on. Subpoenaed. Well, I hope he gets a peanut as well. So that's enough. The Democrats can be reasonably sanguine about the forthcoming presidential election, but it's certainly not in the bag. There's no room for complacency. Anyway, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is one of the most scintillating and inspiring people to be elected this time. Not that I agree with her on everything. She's an ardent Catholic. Is she pro-life? I doubt it. So there's a bit of cognitive dissonance going on there. Double think. Yes, I'm a passionate Catholic, but I think abortion is acceptable. But she's not a child of privilege, and she has been castigated by Fox News, who are laughing in her face just because she's not rich. This is the same Fox News which then rails against the elite, drain the swamp, and they have outright contempt for an ordinary person who's not rich. She didn't come from a wealthy family. Her father was an architect, so he completed higher education. He's part of a learned profession, hardworking, and they don't have very much money. It exposes the myth that if you work hard, if you get a higher education, you'll have a decent standard of living.